I stood in the grand hall of the Whitmore estate in Montauk, wearing the most unassuming outfit possible to conceal a professional identity that no one in this glamorous room was worthy of knowing. My name is Janelle, a 28-year-old woman whose life revolves around the cold precision of corporate audits rather than the hollow sparkle of these high society galas. While the elite mingled under crystal chandeliers, I remained a silent observer of an excessive opulence that felt more like a fragile stage set than a secure home. The tension broke when my sister Kaitlyn approached me with a sneer that revealed years of deep-seated insecurity hidden behind her expensive designer makeup. She pointed a manicured finger at the crystal glass in my hand, while her voice dripped with a toxic mixture of condescension and newfound arrogance. "Don't touch anything here because if you break it, you simply do not have the means to pay for it," she hissed before leaning closer to ensure her words stung. "And stay away from my fiancé because you lack the status to even stand beside a man like Tristan Whitmore." I did not flinch or offer a word of defense as I quietly placed my glass on a marble console while my eyes fixed on the glittering necklace gracing her throat. I knew for a fact that her entire queenly persona was built on a foundation of rented lies and borrowed prestige that was about to vanish. A slow smile spread across my face because I realized the very person treating me like a servant was actually standing on the brink of a total financial collapse. Subscribe now to witness how the calculated smile of a high-level auditor will cause this entire empire of lies to crumble into pieces during the next chapter. In the fast-paced financial world of New York, I have built a solid reputation as an expert capable of uncovering dirty money, even when it remains buried beneath dozens of the most complex layers of deception. My career as a senior independent auditor involves dismantling multi-million-dollar fraud schemes that would leave most professionals completely bewildered by the sheer scale of the corruption involved. People often assume that the biggest lies are told in dark alleys, but I know from experience that they are usually whispered in boardrooms or written in fine print on expensive stationery. The reality of my family life shifted 6 months ago when my sister Kaitlyn approached me with a desperate plea for $30,000 to cover her urgent medical bills following a minor accident. While I initially felt a natural impulse to help my only sibling, my professional instincts forced me to look closer at the sudden financial emergency she claimed was destroying her stability. It did not take long for me to realize that her hospital records were nothing more than carefully crafted forgeries designed to manipulate my sense of family loyalty. Instead of paying for surgery, Kaitlyn used my hard-earned savings to hire a shadowy firm that specialized in creating a sophisticated fake creative portfolio for her. This fraudulent resume was her golden ticket to infiltrate the elite Whitmore family and secure a high-ranking position that she was never qualified to hold. The situation grew even more toxic when my mother Lorraine discovered the truth about the missing money and the elaborate lies Kaitlyn was telling to impress her new wealthy associates. Instead of demanding honesty, Mom grabbed my arm in the kitchen one evening and insisted that I must remain silent to protect our family's chance at a prestigious alliance through marriage. She actively participated in the deception by helping Kaitlyn shred every physical bank statement and personal expense receipt that could potentially link back to the original loan. My mother believed that sacrificing my financial security was a small price to pay for the reflected glory of seeing her eldest daughter become a member of the Whitmore social circle. During those tense weeks at home, I watched as Kaitlyn practiced her refined accent and memorized the details of the fake projects she claimed to have led for international clients. I felt a cold detachment growing inside me while I observed the two women I shared a house with working together to bury the evidence of their betrayal. Rather than engaging in a fruitless emotional argument, I decided to treat this entire disaster as the most critical audit project of my entire professional life. I began maintaining a secret digital ledger where I recorded every suspicious transaction and every lie that Kaitlyn told to maintain her fragile facade of success. I reached out to my best friend Gideon, who is a brilliant lawyer specializing in high-stakes financial crime, to help me verify the legal standing of the evidence I was gathering. We spent many long nights reviewing the digital footprints that Kaitlyn thought she had deleted, but I knew exactly how to recover the fragments of her deceit from the cloud. Gideon looked over the files and confirmed that the scale of her fraud went far beyond simple sibling rivalry and could actually lead to serious legal consequences if brought to light. He reminded me that I needed to stay patient and wait for the moment when the pressure of her own lies would make her move too fast and leave a permanent mark. Kaitlyn eventually managed to secure an invitation to the Whitmore estate by presenting her fabricated portfolio to Tristan's father, who was looking for a fresh creative director for their foundation. She walked through our house with a new sense of superiority, often acting as if I were a distant acquaintance, rather than the person who had financed her entire deceptive lifestyle. I continued to document the way she spoke about the Whitmores, as if they were her personal property, while ignoring the growing debt she owed to my personal bank account. The audit was nearly complete, and every single piece of data was leading toward an inevitable collision that neither my mother nor Kaitlyn could possibly avoid. At exactly 6 o'clock in the evening, as a steady stream of luxury vehicles began to line up at the entrance of the estate, Kaitlyn executed the first move in her calculated plan to push me to the very margins of society. I watched from the shadows of the grand foyer as she greeted the distinguished guests with a practiced elegance that perfectly masked the financial crimes she had committed to stand among them. When the Whitmore family approached the entrance, she placed a proprietary hand on my shoulder and introduced me to everyone as a temporary kitchen assistant she had hired out of pure charity. She spun a tragic story about how I was struggling to find stability in the city, effectively stripping away my dignity as a professional auditor before I could even open my mouth. The blatant contempt from the invited guests was immediate and heavy as I moved through the crowded ballroom while balancing a heavy silver tray of vintage champagne. I could feel their judgmental eyes scanning my simple black uniform, their whispers growing louder as they compared my presence to the polished perfection of the woman they believed was their social peer. Every time I offered a glass to a member of the elite, they looked right through me as if I were a piece of furniture rather than a human being with a story of my own. My sister stood at the center of the room, basking in the attention, and occasionally pointing in my direction to remind her new friends of her supposed generosity toward the less fortunate. Tristan Whitmore eventually appeared near the buffet looking sharp in his tailored tuxedo, while his eyes searched the room until they finally landed on my tired face. He watched me for several long moments with a pensive expression that suggested he was questioning the narrative Kaitlyn had so carefully constructed about our family dynamic. Despite the growing tension in his jaw, he chose not to intervene or challenge her actions, remaining a silent witness to the escalating cruelty unfolding in his own home. I managed to maintain a neutral expression because I knew that his observation was a necessary part of the larger audit we had discussed in private. The atmosphere turned even more malicious when a guest who had clearly consumed too much alcohol caused a scene near the center of the polished marble floor. Kaitlyn did not miss the opportunity to further humiliate me by demanding that I clean up the mess immediately while the entire room watched in hushed silence. She stepped forward, her voice ringing out clearly so that every wealthy associate would hear her latest display of authority over me. "Clean it up properly, Janelle, because this is quite literally the only chance you will ever have to earn money in a place as prestigious as this," she said with a sharp smile. I performed the degrading task with a calm and methodical pace, while ignoring the stifled laughter and the cameras that were undoubtedly capturing my perceived fall from grace. My mind remained focused on the digital evidence stored in my phone, counting every second of this humiliation as another line item on the final invoice she would eventually have to pay. Every drop of sweat and every insult from the crowd was being recorded in my internal ledger, serving as fuel for the fire that was about to consume her carefully built reputation. I knew that the higher she climbed on this ladder of lies, the more devastating her eventual collapse would be when I finally presented my findings. Mom watched the entire scene from a distance, her face a mask of cold indifference as she sipped her wine and deliberately avoided making eye contact with me. Her silence was a clear endorsement of the abuse, proving that she valued the potential Whitmore inheritance more than the well-being of the daughter who had actually supported her. I realized then that I was truly alone in this house of mirrors, but the realization only made my resolve to finish the audit even stronger. The night was still young, and while they celebrated their perceived victory, I was quietly preparing to bring the entire structure of their deception crashing down to the ground. When dinner began, it was also the moment Kaitlyn decided to launch her most dangerous attack to strip away my honor forever. We were all seated around the long mahogany table when she suddenly lowered her silk napkin and looked toward the Whitmore family with a face full of manufactured grief. She cleared her throat to get everyone's attention before publicly assigning me the blame for a significant financial discrepancy in the family charity fund she was supposedly managing. Kaitlyn claimed that a large sum of money intended for underprivileged children had disappeared shortly after I was given access to the temporary digital records. Every eye in the room turned toward me as if I were a common thief caught in the act of betraying my own blood. Mom joined the performance by covering her face with a handkerchief and sobbing quietly to increase the emotional weight of my sister's false accusations. She whispered to the guests sitting near her that she was heartbroken to see her youngest daughter turn into such a professional con artist. Kaitlyn continued her speech by using harsh words to describe my lack of moral fiber while painting herself as a victim who had tried her best to save me from a life of crime. Tristan began to ask tough questions about the specific fund control procedures, while his gaze remained fixed on the suspicious gaps in Kaitlyn's story. He wanted to know exactly how a kitchen assistant could bypass the security protocols of a high-level creative director like her. My sister started to show signs of hesitation for the first time, as she realized that Tristan was not simply accepting her words without evidence. She tried to deflect the technical questions by leaning on her emotions, yet the cold logic of the situation was starting to reveal the cracks in her facade. I remained silent throughout the entire ordeal while my hand gripped the phone containing the absolute truth about her fraudulent creative projects. I watched her struggle to maintain her composure as Tristan pushed for a detailed explanation of why the audit logs did not match her verbal report. The atmosphere at the table became suffocating as the guests waited for me to break down and confess to a crime I did not commit. Instead of crying or begging for mercy, I waited for the perfect moment of silence to challenge her authority in front of everyone. I looked directly into her eyes and asked a single question that caused the air to grow even thinner in the dining room. Are you absolutely certain that every single one of your financial reports is transparent, Kaitlyn? My voice was calm and steady, creating a sharp contrast with the frantic energy coming from across the table. She opened her mouth to snap back at me, but the sheer confidence in my tone made her pause for a second too long. I could see the panic behind her polished exterior as she realized that I was no longer the passive victim she had been bullying for years. Mom tried to intervene by telling me to be quiet and show some respect for my older sister's position within the Whitmore household. I ignored her completely and continued to stare at Kaitlyn while the weight of her lies began to press down on the entire dinner party. The trap she had set for me was now closing around her own neck because she had underestimated the precision of an auditor who had been watching her every move. The high society guests began to shift in their seats as they sensed that the real scandal was about to unfold before the main course was even served. 10 days before the party at Montauk, a secret meeting at my office completely changed the course of this entire theatrical display of lies. Tristan had been suspicious of Kaitlyn for a long time and decided to take the initiative to find me due to my reputation for independent auditing. He arrived at my office without an appointment, carrying a thick folder of financial reports that his fiancée had submitted to the Whitmore Family Foundation. We sat across from each other in the quiet conference room as I began to dissect the complex layers of fabricated data she had used to build her professional reputation. It did not take long for me to expose the entire fraudulent portfolio, including the $30,000 debt she had manipulated from my personal savings. Tristan watched in silent disbelief as I pulled up the original bank statements and compared them to the doctored documents he held in his hands. I showed him how Kaitlyn had used the borrowed funds to hire ghostwriters and graphic designers to create a body of work that never actually existed in the real world. Every creative project she claimed to have led was actually a stolen concept from smaller firms that were too intimidated to speak out against her. The more I revealed, the more the respect in Tristan's eyes shifted from his fiancée toward the technical precision of my audit process. He realized that the woman he was about to marry was a carefully constructed fiction designed to siphon wealth from his family estate. We decided to form a strategic alliance to create a public revelation of the truth during the highly anticipated engagement party at his home. I requested that Tristan remain completely passive and refrain from intervening regardless of how much Kaitlyn attempted to humiliate or frame me throughout the evening. He agreed to let the drama escalate until I gave the final signal to release the digital evidence to the invited guests and the board members. We coordinated our moves like professional chess players, ensuring that every insult she threw at me would serve as more evidence of her true character. There was a growing sense of mutual respect between us, as he began to recognize the depth of my professional talent and my unwavering commitment to the truth. As the meeting came to an end, Tristan looked at me with a complicated expression of curiosity and lingering sadness about the betrayal he was facing. He asked a question that had clearly been weighing on his mind since he first witnessed Kaitlyn's arrogance toward her own family. Why are you willing to endure this public humiliation before we finally reveal everything to the crowd? I looked back at him with the cold focus of a senior auditor who had seen every type of corporate villain imaginable during my career. I replied simply that I wanted to see exactly how far she would go in her own deception before the entire structure collapsed around her. This alliance was not born out of a desire for petty revenge, but rather from a shared need to protect the integrity of the Whitmore legacy from a predatory interloper. I spent the remaining days leading up to the party refining the digital presentation and ensuring that every single claim could be backed up by ironclad legal proof. Gideon provided the final legal review of our plan to ensure that we were acting within the boundaries of the law while maximizing the social impact of the truth. While Kaitlyn was busy picking out designer dresses and practicing her fake smile, I was quietly sharpening the tools that would lead to her ultimate professional and social demise. The stage was set, and for the first time in years, I felt like the one who was truly in control of the family narrative. At exactly 9:15 in the evening, the sharp ring of a silver bell echoed through the ballroom to interrupt the formal engagement announcement, and I knew it was finally time to end this cheap theatrical performance. Instead of offering the apology that my family expected, I walked steadily onto the center stage and took control of the large digital projector meant for showing engagement photos. I bypassed the security codes with a single click and began projecting the undeniable evidence of Kaitlyn's massive creative fraud and secret slush funds onto the massive screen for every guest to see. Every detail of the $30,000 debt she stole from me appeared in high resolution, along with the invoices she used to buy her fake professional portfolio. The room fell into a deafening silence as the high society guests stared at the cold numbers, proving that their new favorite socialite was actually a common financial predator. Kaitlyn immediately fell into a state of visible panic while she tried to run toward the stage to disconnect the power cables, yet she was quickly blocked by two of Tristan's personal security guards. Her face twisted in a mixture of rage and terror as the scrolling documents revealed the exact dates of her forgeries and the names of the firms she had manipulated. I remained standing in the spotlight with the calm composure of a professional who had finally completed a long and difficult investigation into a corrupt entity. The revelation grew even more devastating when the next set of documents exposed the truth about Mom being an active accomplice in covering up the entire deception. The evidence showed how she had helped shred bank statements and lied to the Whitmore family to ensure that Kaitlyn could successfully infiltrate their inner circle through marriage. A collective gasp rose from the crowd as the prestigious families of Montauk realized that this entire engagement was built on a foundation of betrayal and criminal intent. Mom stood frozen at the edge of the room while her silk handkerchief fell to the floor, her mask of maternal grief finally replaced by the stark reality of her exposure. Tristan stepped forward from the shadows of the stage with a cold and determined expression that signaled the absolute end of his tolerance for my sister's lies. He looked directly at the woman he was supposed to marry, while his voice rang out with enough authority to silence the remaining murmurs in the hall. "I would never commit my life to a financial criminal who treats her own family like a resource to be exploited," he declared, while removing his engagement ring from his finger. "Every agreement between our families is officially void, and everything between us ends right here in front of everyone you tried to deceive." Kaitlyn collapsed onto the marble floor as the weight of her social and professional ruin finally crushed the last remnants of her arrogance. I looked down at my broken sister and felt a profound sense of clarity rather than the pity she was likely hoping to elicit from the remaining guests. I leaned in close enough for her to see the lack of emotion in my eyes, while I spoke the words that had been building inside me since the first time she insulted my profession. "I warned you before that you were never worthy of standing beside the truth, and now you have the rest of your life to calculate exactly what that cost you." The elite crowd began to exit the ballroom in a hurry, as if the scandal itself were a contagious disease they needed to escape before the morning news cycles began. I watched Tristan walk away without a single backward glance, while the security team began the process of escorting my mother and sister out of the estate. The grand hall that had once felt so suffocating was now filled with the fresh air of justice and the silent satisfaction of a completed audit. I walked off the stage with my phone in my hand, knowing that the ledger was finally balanced and that the price of betrayal had been paid in full. Early the following morning, the town of Montauk no longer welcomed my sister with praises, but with an official summons from the Superior Court. Tristan acted with devastating speed to execute strong legal measures intended to recover every asset that had been misappropriated during their brief engagement. He filed a comprehensive lawsuit against Kaitlyn for grand larceny and fraudulent misrepresentation, ensuring that her criminal actions were documented in the public record. The news spread through the elite circles like a wildfire, resulting in a total boycott from the media and the high society associates she had worked so hard to impress. Every bit of the reputation she had built using my borrowed $30,000 vanished within hours of the sun rising over the estate. The telephone rang incessantly on my desk until I finally answered to hear the shrill voice of Mom screaming at me from the other end of the line. She did not call to offer an apology for her complicity or to express remorse for how they had treated me throughout the past few months. Instead, she chose to hurl insults and label me a cold-blooded monster who had deliberately destroyed the family for the sake of a professional ego. She claimed that I was responsible for the shame they were facing because I had chosen the truth over the blind loyalty she expected from me. I listened to her frantic breathing for a moment while realizing that her version of a family was just another carefully maintained facade that I had finally dismantled. I chose to remain calm and composed as I informed her that our biological connection was officially severed as of that very moment. I told her that I no longer considered myself part of a family that valued criminal deception more than the honesty and hard work of their own children. My voice was steady as I explained that my lawyer Gideon had already been instructed to file a separate lawsuit to recover the original debt Kaitlyn owed me. I made it clear that I would not stop until every penny of my savings was returned to my account, regardless of their current financial situation. There was a long silence on the line before I hung up the phone and blocked her number for the final time. Kaitlyn and Mom were left to face the crushing reality of their situation inside a house that now felt hauntingly empty and suffocatingly quiet. They were surrounded by massive stacks of unpaid bills and legal documents that they had no hope of settling without the Whitmore fortune to support them. The designer dresses and expensive furniture that once defined their social status were now just reminders of the debt that was about to consume their lives. Kaitlyn spent her hours staring at the dark screen of her phone while waiting for messages from friends who had already deleted her contact information. The social world they had tried to infiltrate had closed its doors firmly, leaving them with nothing but the consequences of their own greed. I spent the afternoon methodically packing my remaining belongings into a few sturdy suitcases while ignoring the ghost of the life I was leaving behind. There was no sense of sadness or regret as I walked through the rooms that had witnessed so much betrayal and manufactured drama over the years. I knew that my future as a senior auditor was brighter than ever because I had proven that I could handle even the most personal of investigations with absolute integrity. I loaded my car and drove toward the edge of town, feeling a profound sense of relief as the salt air of Montauk began to fade in the distance. I did not look back once because I was finally moving toward a life where the only things that mattered were the facts and the truth. 6 months later, in my new office overlooking the skyline of Manhattan, I realized that the greatest freedom is no longer having to carry the heavy burden of toxic people on my shoulders. The clean lines of the skyscrapers represent the order I have finally restored to my own life after the chaotic betrayal of the Montauk incident. I spend my mornings focusing on high-level financial forensics while enjoying the genuine respect of colleagues who value my sharp intellect and professional ethics. There is a profound sense of peace in knowing that my current success is built on a foundation of honesty rather than the hollow lies that defined my previous family dynamic. I have finally moved beyond the shadows of the past to create a reality where my efforts are actually recognized for their true worth. Kaitlyn is currently forced to perform demanding manual labor in a distant state just to pay off the massive legal debts and court-ordered restitution from her failed fraud attempts. Her credit score has been completely obliterated, making it impossible for her to secure the luxury lifestyle she once believed she deserved. She works long hours at a local warehouse where no one cares about her fabricated professional portfolio or her fake social standing. Every paycheck she receives is automatically garnished to settle the legal bills and the original $30,000 she stole from my savings. She is learning the hard way that a reputation built on deception will always crumble when faced with the cold reality of the law. I have advanced rapidly in my career and earned the deep respect of the financial world thanks to my sharp analytical skills and unwavering honesty during difficult investigations. My mindset has undergone a massive shift because I now understand that a true family is not defined by blood, but by mutual kindness and genuine appreciation for each other. I have chosen to surround myself with people who provide emotional support instead of those who view my hard work as a resource to be exploited. This new community understands the value of boundaries and the importance of holding each other accountable for our individual actions. I no longer feel the need to justify my existence to people who are only interested in using me for their own selfish gain. The most important life lesson I want to share is to never mistake tolerance for enabling the continued spread of destructive behavior within your inner circle. Once you allow a family member to humiliate you just to maintain a false sense of peace, you have already sacrificed your own fundamental value as a person. You must always keep your own records and accurate evidence because in this complicated world, only the objective truth can protect you absolutely. Forgiving someone does not mean you have to remain a victim of their manipulation or allow them to continue damaging your professional reputation. True strength lies in the ability to walk away from toxic relationships to preserve your own integrity and mental health. I want to express my sincere thanks to all of you for listening to the final moments of this dramatic journey through betrayal and redemption. Your constant support has been the primary motivation for me to continue exposing the hidden realities of these modern social dynamics. What do you honestly think about the difficult choice I made to completely cut off my family to protect the truth? If you were in my position, would you be brave enough to prioritize your own dignity over a blood connection that was consistently toxic? Please leave your opinions and personal experiences in the comments section so we can continue this important discussion about self-respect and justice.
Câu chuyện của Janelle không chỉ là một màn trả thù hào nhoáng mà còn là tấm gương phản chiếu những sự thật trần trụi về tình thân và lòng tự trọng trong cuộc sống hiện đại. Qua hành trình này, chúng ta thấy rằng gia đình không phải lúc nào cũng là bến đỗ an toàn nếu nơi đó chỉ tồn tại sự lợi dụng và ích kỷ. Việc Janelle không chọn cách vạch trần Kaitlyn là một quyết định đau đớn nhưng cần thiết, chứng minh rằng sự bao dung không đồng nghĩa với việc tiếp tay cho cái ác. Đừng bao giờ cho phép bất kỳ ai, kể cả người thân, dẫn bạt lên nhân phẩm của bạn chỉ để duy trì một vỏ bọc hòa bình giả tạo. Sự trung thực và năng lực tự thân mới là những con số biết nói giúp bạn đứng vững trước mọi sóng gió. Nếu đặt mình vào vị trí của Janelle, liệu bạn có đủ can đảm để cắt đứt một mối quan hệ độc hại như vậy để bảo vệ chính mình hay không? Hay bạn có cách giải quyết nào khác nhân văn hơn nhưng vẫn đảm bảo được công lý? Hãy chia sẻ quan điểm của bạn ở phần bình luận bên dưới. Tôi rất trân trọng ý kiến đóng góp của các bạn.